The fork slipped from my hand before his words finished. "You'll sign the house over, won't you?" he said. Laughter rippled down the table, tight, rehearsed, a toast to my obedience. The chandelier hummed above us, catching on the wine glass trembling near my elbow. I set it down slow enough for everyone to see. "No," I said. The room froze. Someone whispered my name like a warning. My mother's pearls clicked as she turned away. My father's jaw twitched. Silence fell, broken only by the slow drip of wine onto the floor. Then his voice again. "So will Sue." When I was 8, the sound of breaking glass only ever drew me. Randy would slam a door. A picture frame would fall. I'd sweep up the shards before our parents came home. He called me the cleanup crew and laughed until I smiled so he could keep laughing. That was our rhythm, his noise, my silence. At 12, he crashed my bike into a mailbox. Dad replaced his bike that afternoon. Mine stayed bent and rusted on the curb for years. I told myself it didn't matter. It always did. At 16, I started fixing things. The kitchen sink that leaked for months. The cabinet door hanging by one hinge. Mom would pass me with coffee in hand and say, "You should have been born a boy. At least you'd be useful." Randy would grin over his cereal spoon, tapping the bowl like applause. The sound echoed in my head at night. When college came, Randy failed 2 semesters and still got a new car. I graduated early and got a toolbox. Dad said it suited me better than a desk job. By 25, I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped asking for it. The only person who ever saw me differently was Grandma. She'd sit with me in her garden, pointing out where roots broke the soil just to find light. "You're like that," she'd say. "You don't fight loud, but you grow through concrete." I didn't understand until she died and her will was read. Randy got a trust fund. I got her journals. Everyone acted like that was fair. I used those journals to learn how to rebuild what others gave up on. Old furniture, broken walls, myself. That's how I found the house. A 1920s craftsman collapsing into itself, listed cheap because no one wanted to touch it. I poured everything I had into it. Every check, every weekend, every ounce of calm. Every time a wall cracked, I patched it before anyone could see. When my parents visited once, Dad laughed. "You'll burn yourself out fixing that dump." Mom nodded. "At least Rye's working on something real." I handed them coffee and mugs I'd made by hand. Neither finished. When they drove away, dust rose behind their car. The house creaked, but it stood. I told myself that was enough. I used to think silence kept the peace, that endurance was proof of love. Sitting on the floor that winter night, hands raw from sanding the same step for hours, I realized I had built a home from everything they said would break me. The wind pushed through the window cracks and carried a faint smell of pine. I pressed my palm against the rail I'd just restored, solid, warm, steady. Outside, a dog barked. Inside, only my breathing filled the air. That was the night I stopped waiting for them to see me. The call came on a Wednesday, just before noon. I was sanding the window frame. Sunlight spilled in thin, dusty stripes across the floor. The phone buzzed. His voice cut through the static, flat, practiced. "Randy needs that house more than you do. If you don't sign it over by Friday, we'll see you in court." The word court hit like a nail on glass. I didn't answer. Paint dust clung to my wrist, glittering under the light. My breath stayed even. He mistook the silence for fear and hung up satisfied. Seconds later, the phone lit again. Mom, sharper this time. "You know what you owe us, Nova. We raised you. Don't make this ugly." Then the line clicked dead. It wasn't anger that came first. It was recognition. This wasn't new. It was the same rule dressed up in legal language. My effort belonged to them. The light shifted across the wall as the day slipped forward. I picked up my chisel and pressed it into the frame. The sound scraped against the quiet. The wood gave way splinter by splinter, steady, deliberate. When the dust settled, sunlight touched every mark I'd made on that house. For years I'd built with my hands because it was the only thing they couldn't rewrite. Now they wanted even that. I wiped sawdust from my palms, reached for the chime of keys hanging by the door, and closed my fingers around the metal until it bit into my skin. The keys didn't rattle. Neither did I. That was the moment I stopped being their daughter and started being their opponent. Julia's office smelled like paper and cold coffee. Sharp, sterile, unbothered. I sat across from her, palms flat on a folder I'd brought. 5 years of proof that I'd built everything on my own. She skimmed the papers in silence. Her pen tapped a slow rhythm against the table. Then she laughed, soft at first, then louder, shaking her head. "They are threatening to sue you," she said, clipped, "for a property you own outright." Her laughter cut through the fear I'd been carrying. That was the first time someone laughed with me, not at me. Julia leaned forward. "Let them strike first," she said. "Then we build the case brick by brick. You have documentation." I opened the folder. Receipts, bank transfers, bills, photos of cracked plaster turned smooth by my hands. Each image a record of labor. She told me to keep everything organized, digital, and printed. Chain of evidence matters more than outrage. Her tone was calm and instructional. Not pity, strategy. That night, I started the quiet work. I labeled folders on my computer. Mortgage, renovations, utilities. Printed copies went into brown envelopes lined up across the dining table. I replayed the call with my father and saved it under threat recordings. Each click, each label steadied me. At 2 a.m, I sat surrounded by stacks of paper and the hum of the old radiator. Rain tapped the window. I realized I was cataloging not just evidence, but a life. A week later, Julia called. "They filed," she said. Her voice didn't flinch. Neither did mine. "Good," I said. "Now we file back." 2 days later, we met again. Morning light striped the desk. Julia handed me a pen. "You'll need to sign here," she said. "Counterclaim, fraud, misappropriation, tax violations." Heavy words, clean as glass, breaking in the right direction. I signed proof of inheritance theft. I passed her another folder. Copies of trust records showing how funds disappeared the same year Randy bought a new car and my parents remodeled their kitchen. She scanned, then looked up. "They left a trail," she said. "They always do." At home, I moved through the house, touching each surface as if reminding it who it belonged to. The doorknob I'd polished. The stair rail I'd sanded smooth. The faint scent of varnish near the windowsill. My laptop glowed pale blue as I reviewed the final files. Statement of ownership, property deed, tax records. Each click felt like breathing. My phone buzzed with family messages. "You're making this worse. Think of our reputation." I archived them into a folder named Noise. Days blurred into weeks. I worked by day and built my defense at night. Julia handled subpoenas, the language of war dressed as civility. My part was order. Document, verify, prepare. I became fluent in evidence. When the notice came that we'd enter discovery, I sat at the kitchen table where I used to eat alone. Now it was a command center. Laptop open. Color-coded binders stacked beside my coffee. Every binder spine gleamed under the light. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever built. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the dark window. Same face, different posture. Shoulders back. Hands steady. No more flinching. Power. It wasn't loud. It didn't beg. It was the quiet certainty that comes from knowing the truth and daring someone to challenge it. One evening, Julia called. "They're panicking," she said. "Trying to settle." "Not yet," I answered. "They still think they can shame me into silence." She was quiet for a beat. Then, "Let them talk." The night before the family dinner, I walked through the house one last time. Floorboards creaked beneath my steps, familiar as breath. I stopped in front of the window I'd repaired and watched the reflection of city lights flicker across the glass. Somewhere in that reflection, I saw the woman they never thought I'd become. The chime of my keys broke the stillness. I picked them up, feeling the cool weight in my hand. They weren't just for the doors I'd locked. They were for the ones I'd finally learned to close. By dawn, the documents were packed. Everything labeled, every page sealed. Outside, the sky was pale gray, a morning that felt clean, unfinished, waiting. I poured one last cup of coffee. No sugar, no milk. The spoon clicked once against the ceramic. Silence, but this time it wasn't emptiness. It was preparation. It was control. The dining room smelled of lemon polish and staged warmth. Every chair was full except the one at the end of the table, the one meant for me. I walked in with Julia at my side and Carlos a step behind, his briefcase clicking shut. My mother's eyes were already red. "You came," she said, voice brittle with rehearsed sadness. "We thought maybe—" "I'm not here for a scene," I interrupted. My tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I'm here for closure." My father cleared his throat. The sound was like a gavel. Then let's discuss what you owe the family, he said. Julia brushed the tablecloth, smoothing an invisible wrinkle. Let's, she said evenly, and set a folder in front of him. The sound of paper against wood was sharper than any word. He opened it. Line by line, his authority thinned. These are, he began. Financial records, Julia said, crisp, and proof of misappropriated funds. Your daughter's inheritance filed under your name. The room went very still. A fork clattered near the center of the table. Grace's fiancé looked up, face pale. What inheritance? Someone asked. No one answered. Julia turned another page. We've also included your tax filings. The IRS might find them creative. My mother's breath hitched. Her hand trembled on her wineglass. Randy pushed back his chair. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You're twisting everything. I looked at him for the first time that evening. You spent my trust fund, I said simply. And you helped them try to take my house. That's not twisting. That's math, he laughed, a sound cracked by fear. You can't prove Carlos slid another envelope across the table. But the bank transfers were there. Every cent he spent, every envelope landed like a verdict. For a moment, no one moved. Then noise flooded the room. Voices overlapping, accusations, chairs scraping. Julia stayed seated, pen tapping the folder's edge. When the noise peaked, she spoke softly. You have 48 hours to drop the lawsuit, return the stolen amount with interest, and file amended taxes. Otherwise, we go federal. My father's face flushed deep red. You're bluffing. Julia didn't blink. We're filing in the morning. The chaos drained out of the room, leaving only the hum of the chandelier. I pushed my chair back. I came to give you a chance, I said. Not forgiveness. Grace rose, voice shaking. Randy, she whispered. Is this true? He did not answer. She took off her ring and set it on the table. The small click it made was louder than any shout. My mother began to cry, theatrical and loud. My father stared at the documents as if they might catch fire. Julia gathered the folders and stacked them neatly. Carlos closed his case. I turned toward the door. This isn't revenge, I said quietly. It's accountability. Outside, the evening air was cold and clean. The house behind me glowed through the curtains. Warm light around people who'd spent their lives mistaking control for love. Julia stepped beside me. You did what needed to be done, she said. I nodded once. They wanted a cord, I murmured. Now they have one. We walked to the car. Each step on the gravel sounded like punctuation. Measured, final. From inside, I heard my father shout my name, muffled through the walls. For the first time, I didn't turn back. 6 months later, the house was quiet again. No lawyers, no phone calls, no family names echoing down the hallway, just the steady drip of rain on the porch roof, and the smell of damp earth rising from the garden. The lawsuit had ended. Repayments had begun. Silence replaced the noise they'd once used to control me. Mornings were mine. Coffee on the steps, light moving across the floorboards I had sanded myself. Every mark, every scratch, every nail head gleamed like proof of something that couldn't be stolen. The mail still came thick with envelopes and notices, but each one bore my name alone. One afternoon, Julia stopped by. No suit this time, just a cardigan and quiet eyes. She handed me a final envelope. All settled, she said. I didn't open it right away. We stood in the doorway and listened to the rain. When she left, I set the envelope on the kitchen counter, untouched. The knowledge was enough. Later, I walked through the garden, soil cool beneath my bare feet. The air smelled like new wood and wet leaves. I thought of Grandma's words, how some roots break concrete just to find light. Maybe she saw this coming. Maybe she knew I'd have to grow alone to grow at all. Through the window, the house glowed, not expensive, just warm and lived in. I ran my hand along the stair rail where I once cried over splinters and exhaustion. The wood was smooth and strong. A single beam of sun broke through the clouds and caught the old keyring near the door. The metal shimmered gold against the fading light. I reached out and let it rest in my palm. For the first time, it didn't feel like weight. It felt like proof. This is what survival sounds like. No applause, no cheers, just rain softening against glass. Justice doesn't roar. It lingers. It waits in the corners of quiet houses, in the soft click of a lock finally closing. My family thought they could rewrite what I built. Walls remember, floors remember. I remember. You don't have to shout to reclaim what's yours. You just have to stop opening the door. If this story stayed with you, hit subscribe and stay for more cold, quiet reckonings.